Welcome back, Year 6, to your next reading lesson for this week. So it is Tuesday, so it is our vocab lessons. Our work for today is to develop and broaden our vocab. So let's have a look at the words that we are going to be exploring this week. Now, these words I've taken from the text that we started looking at yesterday. So it might be a good idea for you to reread yesterday's text before we start. Okay, so the words we're going to look at are nourishing, scheduled, flanked, stern and birthed. Now, just looking at some of these words, I'm going to talk you through nourishing in a minute as an example, but let's have a look at the other words. Now, scheduled, just thinking what I already know, if I'm thinking about what that word means. I know if we're thinking about we're following a schedule, so you might be following a schedule at home in your home learning. So you're kind of following a plan, aren't you, at a particular time. So that's what that word kind of means there. And the example in the text, I think, is something about the Titanic was scheduled to return to England. So that's about it's planning to return, it's planning to do something at a particular time. The word flanked, now I think the example in the text is something like 2 large rooms were flanked on either side. So if we're saying 2 large rooms were flanked on either side, I'm thinking that means that they are set at either side. So flanked might mean to be on either side, to be set on either side. Stern, now stern for this, we're not talking about the teacher said in a stern voice, or the teacher was quite stern, as in quite strict. We're not meaning that in this example. Now, the word stern is actually an old Norse word which means to steer. And thinking about all the work we've done on the Titanic so far, especially in the text we looked at yesterday, when we talked about steerage. Steerage was towards the back of the ship, and that's where the third class passengers were, and it was called steerage because that's where all the steering equipment was. So I'm linking all that together. So when it's talking about the stern of the ship, I'm thinking again that means towards the back, so the rearmost part of the ship, because stern means like steerage. I'm thinking about the meaning of the word steer. Steerage, or the steering equipment was at the back, so stern means towards the back of the ship. And birthed, in this word, we're not meaning like someone has given birth. In this instance, I think the example in the text is something like Minnie and Anna were birthed far apart because cabins were spread over 4 floors. The third class cabins spread over 4 floors. So in this example then, birthed, they were birthed far apart. And it's talking about the cabins. So in this instance, I'm guessing birth means something about their sleeping place, or their cabin. So the sleeping place on a passenger ship. So they're just some examples there for you, but you have a read around the text yourself and see what you come up with. But that's what I would say for those there. So I'm going to show you the example of nourishing. So I've got the text there. I have highlighted it in yellow, as you can see there, and I have just put a little box around the sentence there so I know where I'm looking for. So the tables in the third class dining room were covered in white linen tablecloths and plenty of nourishing food was served. So we're going to do what we always do in our vocab lessons. So I'm going to write the word nourishing. Doesn't need a capital letter because it's not a proper noun. So I've got the word nourishing there. So now I'm going to define it. So in my own words, I'm not going to get a dictionary. I'm not going to look it up on the internet. I'm going to try and define it using the examples in the text. So let's have another look. The tables in the third class dining room were covered in white linen tablecloths and plenty of nourishing food was served. So plenty means lots of food was served. I don't think it would be really unhealthy food because they wouldn't kind of advertise that as a good thing. And if I'm thinking about where I've heard that word before, nourish, I've heard it when we're talking about planting seeds, and we're talking about things like you need to nourish the soil with lots of sunlight and water. So I'm guessing it means something like it's good for it to help it grow, and things like that. So would that fit in the text? Plenty of nourishing food was served. So would it fit? Plenty of good, healthy food. Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? So I might put that down there. So nourishing, define it. So it means containing substances for good health and growth. So that's what it means. So they're serving plenty of food containing healthy things which are good for health and growth. Example in the text. So I've already got it highlighted here. Tables in the third class dining room. So the tables in the third class dining room, look at what it says, were covered in white linen tablecloths. Were covered in white linen tablecloths, and plenty of nourishing food was served. Plenty of nourishing food was served. So plenty of healthy food was served. Okay, so I've got the example now. Now I have to use it in my own sentence. So I know that nourishing means it's healthy, it's substantial, it's good for you. So I could put the passengers aboard Titanic ate lots of nourishing meals. So it's still on the same lines of the example from the text. I've just changed it slightly. The passengers aboard Titanic ate lots of nourishing meals. Okay, so they'll eat lots of food which was good for them. Right, synonyms, so words which mean the same. So again, before reaching for a thesaurus or before looking for it on the internet, have a think which words mean the same as nourishing. So nourishing means really healthy and good for you. So a synonym would be healthy. It could also be nutritious. Now, antonyms, so words which mean the opposite. So there's not always antonyms for some of these words, but in this case there is, because I've got healthy. So the opposite of healthy is unhealthy. So sometimes you can just add a prefix. I've got unhealthy there. So that is my example for nourishing. So I've defined it using the example in the text. I've wrote the example in the text. I've wrote my own sentence using the word. I've come up with some synonyms and I've put an antonym as well. So that's what you need to do for each of the 5 words that I have displayed. And like Mr. Fox said last week, we want you to try and push yourself a little bit further, and you can have a look at the etymology. So the etymology is a little bit like about where the word came from, how it's changed over time, the roots of the word. So I've done an example here about stern, which I've already kind of talked about already. And it's from the early 13th century, and it says it's the hind part of a ship, steering gear of a ship. So it's like what I've said there. So the Old Norse word means for steering and to the steering equipment, and we know that the third class passengers stayed in the steerage cabins. So that means where the steering equipment was, and that was at the back. So I figured all that out there. So have a look for etymology. Now you will have to look that up on the internet, okay, and that's absolutely fine as well, but it's just interesting to know the background of some of the words. Okay, so just a little recap then. These are your words for your lesson today: nourishing, scheduled, flanked, stern, and berthed. And I've already kind of talked you through them already. And we want you to define them, use the example from the text, use it in your own sentence, synonyms and antonyms. And if you want that extra challenge, have a look at etymology as well. Okay, so that's it for today, Year 6. Off you go.